We've got to have vapes that are reusable, refillable and rechargeable. We won't hesitate to take further swift action.
So that's what the government minister said ahead of the ban on disposable vapes. But 1 month in, how much waste is actually being cut? And is there a massive flaw in the rules? I'm Lucy Watson, and this is What You Need to Know. Now, before we get into it, remember, if you're enjoying these quick briefings of ours, subscribe to What You Need to Know wherever you get your podcasts, so you never miss one of our episodes. And you can watch full episodes on ITVX, YouTube and Spotify. Now, our digital reporter, Sam Leader, is with me today. Sam, you've been investigating everything that there is to do with vapes for some time now. So remind us all, what exactly was banned at the start of June?
So any vapes that are on the market now have to be refillable and rechargeable. And the kind of reason they did that was firstly to put kids off buying them. You know, they'd be slightly more expensive if they were
Yeah, so why would that, I was
reusable.
intrigued as to why would that put kids off
Yeah.
going for a disposable rather than
Well, my understanding was it would then be slightly more expensive.
Okay.
And we'll come on to it later, but they're actually very similarly priced, the reusable ones. And the main concern was the environmental impact of it. We know that they're terrible for the environment. They've been described as one of the most environmentally damaging products ever made.
Right, we've got a few. For those who are watching us as opposed to listening, we have a few in front of us. One is, I don't know, I suppose the size of my palm, really, like a big rectangle, and is red coloured. And then we've got kind of a minty green one and a lilac-y one.
Yeah.
They are, as that we all often talk about, very brightly coloured and, you know, fruity flavoured. So, Sam, there were reusable vapes already out there. How are these new ones different then?
This is where my vaping expertise comes in.
You are a bit an
Because as we were
expert.
talking before, I did used to smoke and basically then used vapes as kind of that alternative. I know we're not fully aware of the full consequences of vaping at the moment, but it is, you know, what most people use is kind of that gateway between smoking
It's a
and
preferable alternative
and
for you
vaping.
at the moment.
You know, you still buy them now, but what became really popular originally were the vapes where you filled it with actual liquid, and then you put something called a coil on top of it, and then you could recharge that, and that was a whole unit. And that was originally kind of where vaping started. You could actually get the individual liquids that you could change the flavors, and they were, I would say, slightly less accessible to kids.
Were they bigger?
Bigger and also not as convenient, and that's the issue. So then you had the disposable units that came in, so the disposable vapes where you had just the battery,
Yeah.
you couldn't recharge it and you couldn't refill the liquid, and that was, you know, originally, I suppose, for convenience. If you were going to your local shop, you didn't have a vape store close by, or you're going on a night out, for example, and you didn't want to smoke, you would then go to your convenience store and you'd buy these disposable vapes. As soon as you'd run out of liquid or the battery would run out, that was it.
So the whole thing you just chuck.
The whole thing would be chucked. And we found actually, or the Material Focus, who are basically trying to stop finite materials from being wasted, found that 13.5 million disposable vapes were being purchased every week. 8.2
A week?
8.2 million were then littered and not recycled. So that's one every 13 seconds that was being thrown away. Before
I mean,
this
I
vape
knew
ban
the
came in.
popularity had risen.
Yeah,
But that's staggering.
Fast forward again, and then you've got the vapes that we've got now. So, you know, they're supposed to be reusable because you have the charging port in the bottom now.
So
and
this
then
this is one of these, the current iteration.
This is the current one, yeah.
Okay, so this
the
is the green
charging
one. It has a
ports-
charging point on the bottom and then almost like two compartments.
Yeah, so the charging port on the bottom, which charges the unit, which is the battery, which is full of lithium, aluminium, steel, copper. It's stuff that is really valuable. So you can continue using that. And then you've got the liquid pods, which can be replaced, which should make it reusable. But obviously what
Okay.
we found was that you can't get hold of the liquid pods.
At all, or it's just really difficult?
So obviously we went to multiple cities. We did 2 different cities.
Where did you go?
London and Birmingham. And we hit up as many convenience stores as we could to see if they sold any of the pods. And you could not find these pods. They don't sell these pods. And one store owner, one shopkeeper actually said, why would I sell you the reusable pod when I'm going to charge you the same amount for the pod as I would for the whole unit. You might as well
So
just buy
there
a new
isn't
vape.
any difference in
No.
terms.
I mean, there's a slight price difference, but you wouldn't really notice.
And how much are we talking, say, for example, for this?
So you can still get some of these so-called reusable vapes for £10, for example. So that's what it was.
And if you wanted
before.
to buy just the pod,
Just the pod, you could probably get them for £3 or £4 if you could get hold of them. So there's not much price difference at all, which we found defeats the whole point. When we spoke to Material Focus, the organisation that I spoke about earlier, their concern was they look so similar to the old ones, and they are of a similar price point. So consumers are still using them as disposable. Why would you change your habits if you?
what do
you don't know?
people who regularly vape? Because I know that you obviously spoke to people in your report.
Yeah.
What do they think? I mean, are they just discarding them and chucking them away as if they were disposable?
Yeah, and the big thing that kind of experts say is, even if it doesn't matter what vape you're buying, what type of vape you're buying, you should still always recycle it. So under these new regulations, in theory, every convenience store should have a recycling bin. So if you're selling,
So the vape stores should have one, and that's always been the
convenience
case.
stores.
And the convenience
yeah,
stores.
convenience stores. So if you're selling vape units, you should have a recycling bin on your premises to then take these back to kind of negate the effects that they're having on the environment. What Material Focus told us was actually they want to see more of that, because you very rarely see people with the recycling bins in their convenience stores, despite it being under the new law. We were then told by a couple of the convenience stores that they've been ordering in the units but can't get the units. So they've been ordering in the liquid pods, which make them reusable, but the stores actually can't even get hold of them themselves. So we then...
So the stores can't even get the pods,
Yeah.
not just finding
Exactly.
one in 20 stores that might stock the pods. The stores can't even get hold of them.
No, especially the convenience stores. I think vape stores obviously slightly different because they specialize in selling those. But the convenience stores, a couple that we spoke to, said, I've ordered them, they just don't come. And
Surely this makes this whole ban law a bit of a farce then.
pointless, yeah. And we spoke to the Association for Convenience Stores, who said that actually shop owners are really frustrated because they want that repeat custom from customers who have bought a vape in their store to come back and buy the liquids, but they can't get hold of them. And they said, suppliers need to do more to get these pods into retailers.
Now, I know it's only been a month and you may not have the stats or anything, but this was all brought in because of environmental damage, plastic waste. Do we have any idea if fewer vapes are getting thrown away? Yeah.
It's really hard I think it's really hard to quantify it anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, before they estimated that the lithium that was in the batteries in these kind of devices, the amount that was being thrown away every year could power over 10,000 electric vehicle batteries for the amount that was thrown away. Yeah, so it's a huge amount of lithium that's going to waste.
That's crackers.
Yeah, and it's kind of because I think some people don't realise they can be recycled.
Yeah.
But the only real stat we've got at the moment is from the Association for Convenience Stores, who said the recycling bins that convenience stores do sometimes have in their on their premises, the actual amount that they're taking back to be recycled hasn't really changed. So that's been in the last month. So they haven't seen much of a difference yet, but I think we'll see kind of the effects in kind of the next few months. But from where we're standing and the research we did into it and the experts we spoke to, they can't see how this is going to make much of a difference, because under the new regulation, it's not mandatory to have to sell these pods. So
Okay.
a convenience store could sell the whole unit, but they don't have to sell the individual pods. So if they're a similar price point, why would you not just buy the whole unit?
And if you go to the store that you do normally, or you're just going, like you said earlier on, if just going on a night out, there's a shop, it's got a vape. Oh, forget it. I'll just
It just seems like
convenience.
it's like a glaring kind of hole in the regulation, because if you're not making it mandatory to sell the part that makes it reusable, then it's the whole thing kind of becomes slightly pointless.
One of the things that you just said before was about recycling. I didn't know that they could be recycled. Do you think maybe that's another route that the campaign needs to be, to focus on people who are using it, seen as it's such a staggering number, seen as it's growing? Maybe it's all about recycling. Did you know that we could recycle this? Is that maybe another avenue?
Well, that's what some of the experts said to us, was that there's this kind of lack of communication from the government. They've brought in this new vape ban last month, but then they haven't communicated that these new units are reusable. I mean, the amount of people that I spoke to on the street who didn't realise that, when I've got this vape here, that was how you change the pod. They thought it was still the old version. You could just recharge it. So a lot of experts say the government needs to do more to communicate that you can now replace the liquid part of the pod to make it so you can use it more. But also the fact that you can take these to recycling points.
Are the actual pods recyclable?
Yeah, so that's plastic. There are elements within the vapes that aren't, but I think about 77% of the vapes themselves are recyclable, and that's the most important part. And most organisations say, if you go to websites like Recycle Your Electricals, you can find out your closest drop-off point, and that's the big thing that kind of campaigners want, is to, whatever vape you have or whatever sort of reusable electric item that you have, make sure you recycle it, because there's so many precious materials in there that are going to waste.
Now, we've been talking solely pretty much about the environmental impact that vapes have. And whilst absolutely that is important, none of this ban has anything to do with the health implications, the appeal they have to children. And as we've talked about, we've got a bright green one, bright red one that's strawberry ice flavour. We've got blueberry, sour raspberry, lilac one. And
they catch my eye. Let alone...
Hold my hands up. I tried 2 flavours over the weekend. I tried watermelon and I tried cherry, and it was so sweet.
Yeah.
I can 100% understand why these appeal to children, but that doesn't seem to be it isn't part of this ban. There's a big part of me that thinks maybe the government don't know an awful lot about these yet.
Yeah, there's 2 points there, I think. Like, we don't fully know. There are conflicting reports all the time. Vaping is better than smoking. Maybe vaping's worse than smoking. We don't fully know the consequences of vaping because we haven't been able to study it for long enough. So there is that aspect, but I think what's then is even more scary, I suppose, is if you've got kids, and teenagers using them before their lungs have even fully developed, then you're kind of, where does that lead? We don't know the effects of that on adults, let alone children. And as you say, like, I find them like eye-catching. So for teenagers, you're obviously going to want to hold this kind of, bright-coloured vape. I think what the government may have thought was that the price would change because there's, I suppose, more electrical elements going into it. The price hasn't really changed, by maybe £1 in some stores. If a teenager really wants to get their hands on one of the disposable vapes, £1 isn't going to make much of a difference.
So what's next then, Sam? I mean, as we've, it only came in June. Do you see any movement on this to make it actually viable?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. As I say, it is only a month, but I think what we wanted to find out is you'd think that as soon as they became illegal, then you would have access to these reusable pods. I mean, we did speak to
thought maybe they'd got their ducks in the row as soon as they wanted to.
Yeah. And I mean, just before the ban, these stores were selling some of these disposable vapes for as little as sort of £1.50, £2.50
to get rid of
them.
Yeah.
So, that in itself would have created a massive kind of surge in possibly young people buying these disposable devices. But the Independent British Vape Trade Association said that this is already working, allegedly. They're saying their members are reporting that sales of replacement pods are outstripping sales of the devices. And that would indicate that consumers are aware that the devices are reusable and replacement pods are available. They say that the uptake in reusable products may have taken some suppliers by surprise. So that might be why they're not getting the pods in. The government also responded to our report and said that the reason they brought in the ban was to stop kids and teenagers from using the devices. They claim that more recycling bins have been introduced into convenience stores. From what we can see, from what some of the experts we've spoken to have said, it doesn't really seem to be the case at the moment. So it's early on, but at the moment it doesn't look too positive for the...
And in the meantime, recycle, because they can be. Sam, thank you very, very much, and good luck for the next investigation into vapes. And until our next quick briefing, thank you very much for joining us.